Alejandro Ramos Martinez is an experienced fisherman who is used to diving into some of the deepest areas of his local ocean off the coast of South America. One day he made the near fatal mistake of rising too quickly whilst ascending from diving, causing nitrogen bubbles to form in his bloodstream. Scientifically, this is known as decompression sickness or the bends. Unusually, this created great sacs around his body that led to him ballooning and causing him intense pain. This is the strange case of Alejandro Martinez. Alejandro was out fishing as usual on the bottom of the sea. When he needed to ascend, he came up too quickly, causing decompression sickness. His case is thought to be unique because the nitrogen formed sacs around his body. This hasn't been seen before in other cases of the bends, which had doctors baffled. It's also surprising that he managed to survive, considering his case appears to be a very severe reaction. The fact that he is experienced at fishing these waters and being at greater depths is probably what saved his life. It can be fatal, cause pain around the joints, form rashes and even cause paralysis. He quickly gained weight after the accident, putting on 4 stone and 10 pounds, and he is still undergoing oxygen treatments in a pressurized chamber. Miguel Alarcon, a doctor at the Hospital of San Juan de Dios in the city of Pisco in the central southern Peruvian province of the same name, says he and colleagues have already managed to reduce around 30% of the volume of the nitrogen in Alejandro's body through this treatment. Doctors that are researching decompression sickness are studying his case because it is so unusual. They have also considered performing surgery on him, but fear the operation would be too difficult to perform. Unfortunately for Alejandro, he has to continue bearing the pain that this brings him until the oxygen treatments he is having has completely cleared all the nitrogen from his bloodstream. Thankfully, the bends is becoming a rare phenomenon due to the special dive computers that are worn by divers that inform them of how quickly they can ascend. The ocean isn't the only place that this can occur. The bends also affects anyone who happens to be flying, whether it be a space shuttle or an aeroplane. Now, of course, this can only happen if the aircraft is not pressurized, but there are cases of planes that have unfortunately experienced depressurization, and in the early years of aviation there were no pressurized cabins. Altitude decompression sickness became a commonly observed problem associated with high altitude balloon and aircraft flight in the 1930s. In present day aviation, technology allows civilian aircraft, commercial and private, to fly higher and faster than ever before. Though modern aircraft are safer and more reliable, occupants are still subject to the stresses of high altitude flight and the unique problems that go with these lofty heights. A century and 1/2 after the first DCS case was described, our understanding of DCS has improved and a body of knowledge has accumulated. However, this problem is far from being solved. Altitude DCS still represents a risk to the occupants of modern aircraft. Take United Airlines Flight 811 for example. This was a regularly scheduled airline flight from Los Angeles to Sydney with intermediate stops at Honolulu and Auckland. On February 24, 1989, the Boeing 747-122 serving the flight experienced a cargo door failure in flight shortly after leaving Honolulu. The resulting explosive decompression blew out several rows of seats, resulting in the unfortunate deaths of 9 passengers. The explosive decompression would have also affected the breathing ability of the rest of the passengers, which would have vented most of the oxygen from their lungs very quickly. The aircraft returned to Honolulu, where it landed safely. During the climb, the crew made preparations to detour around thunderstorms along the aircraft's track. The captain anticipated turbulence and kept the passenger seatbelt sign lit. At 2:09 AM, 17 minutes into the flight, as the plane was passing from 22,000 feet to 23,000 feet, the flight crew heard a loud thump which shook the aircraft. A second and a half later, the forward cargo door blew off. The door swung out with such force that it passed its normal stop and slammed into the side of the fuselage, bursting the fuselage open. Pressure differentials and aerodynamic forces caused the cabin floor to cave in, and 10 seats G and H of rows 8 through 12 were ejected from the cabin. All 8 passengers seated in these locations were killed. Seats 8G and 12G were unoccupied, as was the passenger in seat 9F. A gaping hole was left in the aircraft, through which a flight attendant in the business class cabin was almost blown out of the aircraft. Passengers and crew members saw her clinging to a seat leg and were able to pull her back inside the cabin, although she was severely injured. Senior flight attendant Laura Brentlinger hung onto the steps leading to the upper deck and was dangling from them when the decompression occurred. The pilots initially believed that a bomb had gone off inside the airplane, as this accident happened just 2 months after Pan Am Flight 103 was blown up over Lockerbie in Scotland. They began an emergency descent in order to reach an altitude where the air was breathable, while also performing a 180-degree left turn to fly back to Honolulu. The explosion damaged components of the onboard emergency oxygen supply system, as it was primarily located in the forward cargo sidewall area just aft of the cargo door. Thankfully, in cases like Flight 811 and in the vast majority of DCS cases associated with aviation, symptoms will completely resolve upon descent. There are times, however, when symptoms persist at 0 above ground level. In rare cases, symptoms will not be present until hours after landing. Almost all of these cases will present within the first 24 hours. If symptoms suggestive of decompression sickness persist or arise in a person with a recent exposure, treatment will depend on the severity of the symptoms. The mainstay of treatment for decompression sickness is 100% oxygen and hyperbaric therapy. In some mild cases, 100% ground oxygen treatment will resolve all symptoms through denitrogenating the blood and tissues. More commonly, a patient with symptoms suggestive of DCS will be transported to a hyperbaric chamber for oxygen therapy under hyperbaric conditions. Hyperbaric medicine has demonstrated effectiveness for wound care treatment and also claims to treat many other diseases and medical conditions, though with less scientific validity. So, what do you think of Alejandro's case and the incredible story of Flight 811? It just goes to show that even with experience and technology, Mother Nature will always prevail. It is incredible that he survived such a reaction to the nitrogen bubbles, and it's totally understandable why it baffled doctors. Thankfully, we have modern medicine that can provide treatment for the majority of decompression sickness cases, but we must never take our work, travel or life for granted. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, why not subscribe so you don't miss the next exciting episode of Strangeries. Thanks for watching.